Hello and greetings to the esteemed panel. Thanks a lot for tuning in for the second episode of Reach UK video podcast. It's if you're tuning in for the first time, Reach UK is a technology scale-up program originated in the US back in 2013 and taken globally last year with Australia and continuing its global expansion this year with introduction of Canada and the United Kingdom. The program is fully backed by Second Century Ventures, and here it will be helpful to explain why we're different from traditional venture capital organizations. Our limited partner is the largest trade association in the world, and a National Association of Realtors in the US, with its 1.4 million members and over 100 bilateral partnerships in 85 countries. So we have the responsibility to the industry as a whole. And in the UK, we're very excited to work with National Association of Estate Agents under the leadership of Mark Hayward, who shares our vision and mission to equip real estate practitioners with the right technology. So here, I'd love to introduce my panel, Mark Hayward, the CEO of National Association of Estate Agents and Propertymark, and Jan Hytch, a partner at Arnold and also a fellow of a National Association of Estate Agents, or NAEA. It's a bit of a mouthful. So thanks a lot, guys, for joining me today and finding time. And hopefully, we'll. The aim of today is to shed some light on how association works, on the problems and issues that are faced by real estate practitioners and your members, and about sort of shed some light on the technology tools that potentially can address these issues. So just to start us off, we know that recently the adoption of PropTech by real estate industry has shifted up a gear to meet the changing demands of the market, and just, look what happened in the last few months, with the COVID. And this relationship wasn't traditionally frictionless. There was frictions between the old guards and the new over how genuinely useful some technologies are. And, we all know that tech can also be, or digital technology can be a hit and a miss. So it would be great sort of to understand more about how association works and how, the technology fits in it. So Mark, I think it would be great if you can start with letting us know how the association works, how other associations like Arla and Nava sort of, fits into all of that. So I'll give the word to you.
Happy to try and explain. It's not too complicated. So we have various, I suppose, parts of the sector within our membership. So NAEA would be the sales side, Arnold would be the letting side, Nava would be the auctioneering, and we also have a commercial arm, which is commercial agents. In effect, they all are under the overarching umbrella of Propertymark. And the reason that we adopted the Propertymark name is that we wanted to engage with the consumers. Everybody within the industry knows who we are and were, but the consumers didn't. And the consumers need to know that our members are indeed members of the organisation, because we're in an unregulated sector currently. That may change, but we regulate our members. They have a code of ethics to adhere to. They have rules and regulations, and if they don't adhere to those, we can punish them. We have a minimum level of knowledge that you're required to take an exam, because you can't just join. So the barrier to entry in the UK for estate agents, letting agents, is almost zero. Our barrier is much, much higher. So the agents that we have, and we have a large proportion of agents, probably about 81% of agents in the UK are members of Propertymark. They choose to be regulated. And I think the level of standards that they apply to their day-to-day work is very evident, and we need to make sure that the consumer knows that there are good actors in the sector and there are bad actors in the sector. And our members have, on the sales side, about 12,000 offices, on the letting side about 8,000 offices, and we're spread throughout the UK. Jan was on a call earlier. We had members from Scotland all the way down to Jersey. So we cover the length and breadth of the country.
Thanks a lot for that, Mark. I think that sort of that sheds some light on what the different abbreviations are. Jan, it would be, I think, very helpful to explain sort of what actually is the fellow of NAEA means. How do you fit in the organization? And traditionally, when we started working together, Reach and NAEA, you're always on the call and you're always this advocate for technology, within the member base. So could you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, the fellowship grade is the highest grade that you can attain within NAEA Propertymark. There's an equivalent in ALA as well on the letting side. It's there to enable people to understand that you are obviously someone who has taken being qualified, experienced, and doing the right thing, doing estate agency in the right way very seriously, because you will have invested a lot of time and effort in study and in the knowledge acquired to get to that level. We support membership right from student level upwards, and that means to say that as soon as someone starts in the profession, they can start learning to gain their qualifications and get their knowledge and get their experience built up, and they can move through an exam and qualification accreditation system to get to that highest level. So it's at the moment, as Mark said, it's not a regulated industry. When that comes down the line, as we hope and believe it will be necessary, and it will be helpful for people to understand, the customer and the consumer to understand who they're talking to and what level of knowledge and experience they have when they're engaging them with their services.
That's fantastic. It would be also very interesting to know your take on technology. Being a market real estate market practitioner yourself, and have also been a part of an association. Do you see sort of traditionally, and has it changed now? With the COVID, what's your take on technology? Is it opportunity? Is it a threat? Has there been any change in the perception? In the last few months?
Well, certainly just going back years and years ago, when technology first started to impact on estate agency, took us from the days where we had little boxes with cards in with our clients' names and addresses on, and a telephone, and that was the only technology that we had when I first came into the industry. When we started to see computers on desks in offices, and then we started seeing people writing bespoke computer programs for client relationship management, marketing management, communication management with clients through estate agency, there was initially a little bit of a mixed reaction. There were some people who thought this was going to be the end of estate agents as we know it, and it was going to take jobs and all this kind of thing in the very early days. But that attitude changed rapidly when estate agents and letting agents began to realise the possibilities and the capabilities that they had as a consequence of access to those kinds of technology. So instead of having to stick stamps on envelopes to mail properties out to people or put them in the newspaper, suddenly you were in an arena with the advancement of the internet age of being able to communicate with people with good quality bespoke marketing without having to pay fortunes to third parties to advertise those properties for you. It has created a much more agile marketplace for estate agents to work in. So it's prevented agents from being limited to operating just in their local area. An estate agent can operate across a much broader patch. It's given us the ability to manage data, to look after clients' interests, to manage GDPR. It's given us the ability to market people's properties in any which way they want, to do really good quality photography and to use that, and to offer services, multiple services to clients. And in recent times, it's even allowed us to have an interactive relationship with clients 24/7 so that we can communicate with them. They have their own online portal, and we can arrange viewings without even having to be in the office or anything like that. So that's been massively important to help us to do our jobs. And we're very much, my business now is very much scoping itself to make sure that when the phone rings, it rings where someone is rather than in an office. And our clients, for the most part, they don't want us sitting in offices all day long and making phone calls out. They want us out at their properties and engaging with them, selling their houses, showing people around. So technology is going to enable us to provide much more agile services over a wider time span and be able to do an awful lot more with remote working as well.
I think this is, that's an extremely positive view. And I think, with a lot more emergent technologies, sometimes, you can have something like a technology fatigue setting in. Mark, it would be very interesting to find out how traditionally sort of the members of a National Association of Estate Agents, how they adopted technology. Do you, as an organization, as a membership organization, how do you introduce technology into the member base? Maybe here it'll be interesting to sort of to understand why you decided to affiliate, with Reach UK, and sort of where your traditional relationship with NAR, sort of how does that play a role?
Happy to answer those questions. Going to how do people view it and how do they adopt it? As Jan said, there are prop tech deniers. The only way is the old way, and I'm not going to change. I think the change is necessary. What PropTech will do is enable the good agents out there to spend more face-to-face, as Jan says, real time with people, with the PropTech in the background. I was very keen to be involved with Reach UK. Since I've been in post, I've been to the States a number of times, and one of the first things I was impressed with was Second Century Ventures and the view that NAR had taken earlier this century to be part of development rather than just promoting a development. And I think, how do our members find out about it? We have well over 100 events, for instance, a year where new technology can be exposed. We have exhibitions. We have a very, very frequent communication process in terms of putting new products and news to our members so they can find out about that. And I think it's just so important that moving forward with PropTech, that PropTech is designed in association with the agent, rather than a PropTech provider coming to an agent saying, look what I've just produced, and they go, well, that's lovely, but it doesn't suit us at all. So that's one of the real benefits I saw is agents being part of the development, rather than just being given a product and saying, oh, you want to buy this? And they go, no, I don't. And what we don't want is them solving a problem that doesn't exist.
From your experience, in this market, what did you see straight away that, you see, you deem useful? Maybe you have some examples.
The problem that we've had in the past is that very excited programmers have got together and thought from a user point of view, from a consumer point of view, the things that they've added up, all of the things on their whiteboard that were unsatisfactory for them, and thought, right, we'll find solutions for that. And there hadn't been nearly enough consultation with actual estate agents and letting agents to work out and realise what the shortfalls are of what's out there. It's difficult for an agent to really do a lot more than just say, well, this is what I've got and this is the frustration I have with this product. These are the limitations. So, for example, the one sort of big tick that very few, should I say, PropTech CRM writers have got across is integration of Outlook with their product. They will insist on having a standalone internal calendar function, which is difficult when you're running a multi-service business like mine, where one department cannot be communicated with via to invite them to meetings, to plan ahead for projects, because we have to look in two diaries all the time. So there's a for instance straight off. Things like the ability to now use electricity-based telephony or internet-based telephony. The problem that we've got is a lot of firms are now moving to VoIP so that they can manage their incoming calls to make sure that the calls aren't missed and they get to wherever they are. So if they're not in the office, and no estate agent who is busy should be in an office, they should be on the road somewhere or in a house. How do we manage those calls? How do those calls get to them? And can we integrate the software that we use to manage our client relationships with the telephony? So we've got VoIP-based systems being used in most places now, and we want to be able to call straight from our software program. We want that call to be recorded in the in the notes in our software program, and we want to be able to edit that call to add in what we've said and what we've discussed and what's been agreed. And we want to be able to do that on a mobile platform. It has to be able to function on 4G because a lot of us are out a lot of the time. It needs to work on weak 4G because in the rural areas, you don't always have 4 bars or 3 bars even. So all of these things are things that it's the granular detail of the job, and particularly the way the job is evolving, that need to be addressed. You spoke earlier about what's happened since COVID lockdown and how's that changed things. It's absolutely forced a lot of agents to engage with technologies they've never dreamed of having to use in their careers. I think a lot of the older agents thought they were going to get through their entire career without having to engage with those kinds of technologies, but they've actually embraced it and they've realized actually quite how useful it is. So again, I would say anybody developing software products at the moment, particularly client relationship management software, be very aware that there are new adopters in there. Keep it simple, make it transparent to use, and make it encompassing so it works across telephones, across marketing, across emailing, across social media, so that you can have your client in their property, and then you can see all of the activity that goes on from that one relationship, be it a phone call, an email, or what you've done for them on social media.
Well, that's I think we're very excited here to create this relationship with the industry and create this continuous feedback loop to make sure that the solutions that we're working with are genuinely useful for your members. Through your careers in real estate, I think you've been approached by so many founders with so many technology solutions. Have you got any sort of do's and don'ts for the founders? How to?
Well, first do is we use the phrase KYC in compliance, but it's actually know your customer, understand what he wants, how his job operates. Don't go blindly in. Agents have got prop tech fatigue. There's a day probably doesn't go by when somebody emails them or telephones them to say, hey, I've got a new product. So you really, if you're developing a product, you need to establish the benefits of that to the agent. We know that house purchases take an inordinate amount of time at the moment, 18 to 20 weeks. Anything that can improve that speed is good, because at the conclusion of the sale, at completion, agents get paid. So anything that can speed that up helps their cash flow. The other thing is that it's got to be simple to the consumer, and it's got to be seen again as a benefit to the consumer. On the sales side, people only move every 18 to 20 years, so they don't engage with an agent. So it's got to be, as we talked earlier, simple and transparent and of a real benefit. But we've seen in the lockdown, we've seen grandparents in 3 months become very, very tech savvy, because that's the only way they can see their grandchildren or visit their children and their husbands is online. So as Jan said, more and more people are adopting it. The other thing I would say to those seeking to produce a product is remember what the marketplace looks like in terms of the population of that marketplace. Over 80% of agency businesses are 1 to 3 office practices. They are owner managers. So again, the next message needs to be very clear, because it's difficult using a shotgun to actually target these people, because there are just so many of them out there. There are some larger firms, but they are in the minority. So do your research, and this is why this Reach UK format is so good, because there'll be mentoring, there'll be advice panels, advisory panels, so that there can be that interaction at a very early stage.
Thanks, Mark. How about you, Jan? What your experience tells you in terms of do's and don'ts for the family?
I would say do recognise that our primary job is customer relationship management. A secondary to that is the business of selling the house. So again, the technology that we want is the technology that helps us to keep in touch with and build a relationship with and look after a client or a potential client, because they will be customers to start with before they become clients. And recognise that the marketing side of the software is very important and will be very important for the window of time in which you're selling someone's house or letting someone's house. But in order to keep that client and be able to come back and look after that client with different services, and to persuade that client that next time, be it 7 years, 10 years, 18 years time, you still want to be in touch with that client so they come back and sell you a house, that's the bit that's important. So that I think has been the wrong way around with a lot of prop tech I've seen, is that the house is first and foremost, the property is first and foremost, and yet we spend 80% of the time with our clients in the relationship with them, just being with the client and talking with the client and helping them to understand the market, helping them to understand how mortgages work, teaching them about the process of how a house is bought and sold, generally keeping their confidence going and finding them houses. The bit about selling a property is actually, is very important, but not nearly as much as the ability to keep in touch and keep that client for life.
Did you come across any technology recently that got you genuinely excited?
I think the one thing that we've talked about this between us that was exciting was a recognition that not only the business of the client and the property was important, but the way that an agent can look after its own people, safety, the safety of employees. We obviously, again, going down the route that we are now, which is to say we're much more agile. The workforce is much more mobile. We can have our meetings at the start of the day like this on Zoom or Teams or something. We can go out and do appointments with our clients all day long and viewings. We can have our catch-ups in the day on a telephone, in a car, in a lay-by somewhere, all that sort of stuff. That's all great, and it's fantastic because delivering our resource and our knowledge and ourselves to where our clients need us. But keeping track of everyone in a way of making sure that they're safe is more difficult. We've talked about SafePoint and we've talked about other products, which could, and I feel probably should be, the kind of products that are integrated into the software to take it a stage further, so that you can say, great, we've assigned a viewing to Joe, who's going out to show a property at 12 o'clock. That will be a half-hour viewing, and it gives the ability for Joe, by Joe's phone, to be tracked at that viewing, to make sure that when she's finished the viewing, she presses a button to say, I'm done with the viewing, I'm on to my next appointment now, so that the office knows that Joe's safe and is not come to any harm. And that kind of technology, obviously, everybody in a estate agency thinks of Susie Lamplugh and that terrible tragedy that occurred made us all focus very much on making sure people are where they say they are. Lots of offices have got their own homemade procedures to do that kind of thing, but nothing as sophisticated as something maybe linked into a piece of software that enables you to be sure that your staff are safe when they're working remotely, as many more people are doing now. So that's just sort of one example.
Yeah, Mark, how about you?
I'd actually talk about something that's probably quite close to home in terms of, we have something called the Propertymark Passport, which is an ID verification tool, which takes biometrics you can use with a mobile phone, and with people particularly working from home, not wanting to visit agents' offices, this ID verification is very simple, very cost effective, very quick. There's a 2 billion to 1 chance it will get it wrong. So it's exactly the same technology as when you eventually are allowed to fly into this country or out of this country. You just put your passport in a machine, a camera looks at you and says, yes, that is Natasha. And it's unequivocal. And I suppose the reason for mentioning that is a product that was supported by Second Century Ventures in the US. They came to see me to say, this is going to be great, so you can establish who's viewing your house. I said, no, actually, it will be better if you can actually identify unequivocally the person that you are dealing with, and we need that to comply with anti-money laundering legislation. So there was a requirement, a product that was designed for something else, but actually it works better this way, and that's been incredibly successful.
Yeah, but thanks a lot for your views, Mark, Jen. I think it was incredibly insightful. And just to sort of wrap it up, I'll go through the main takeaways of today's conversation. So we know that Propertymark is an umbrella for all of the different associations within it. There's a sales arm, there's a lettings arm, there's a commercial arm. About 81% of all of the estate agents are the members of NAEA Propertymark. we're very excited about what we're creating here with the, with the synergetic relationship between the industry and the technology startups. And we are going to do it in a number of ways, collaborating very closely with NAEA. And, that's a number of ways we do. There's an insight panel giving the market practitioners the chance to shape the technology that goes through our doors. So don't hesitate to talk to us and find out, what other sort of events and initiatives that we have in order to bridge this gap between the industry and the technology. If you want to stay up to date with the NAEA News, Propertymark and Reach, please follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. We tend to create some interesting pieces of information, and also being a global company, there's always something going on in one of the 4 territories where Reach and Second Century Ventures are present. For now, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye-bye.